The warning came at 3 in the morning when most of the crew was sleeping. Captain Jake Morrison rolled out of his bunk as the red alarm lights flashed across his small cabin. He grabbed his uniform and ran to the bridge of the Liberty's Edge, his boots echoing through the empty hallways. "What do we have?" Jake asked as he stepped onto the command deck. His ship was not the biggest in the Earth Defense Corps, but it was fast and his crew knew their jobs well. "Distress signal from Colony 7, sir," said Lisa Park, his communications officer. She was young but smart, and Jake trusted her completely. "The message just came through, it's bad." Jake looked at the main screen as Lisa played the recording. The voice belonged to Commander Roy Davis, the military leader of Colony 7. The man sounded scared, and that worried Jake more than anything else. Roy was a tough soldier who had fought in 3 wars. "This is Colony 7 calling any Earth ships in the area. We have a code black situation. Vexithara is heading straight for us. I repeat, Vexithara is coming to our world. Our defense forces tried to stop it, but we lost 12 ships in the first attack. The beast destroyed our orbital stations like they were made of paper. We are moving all civilians to the underground shelters, but I don't think they will hold. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We have 8,000 people here, including families with small children." The message ended, and the bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about Vexithara. It was the monster that parents used to scare their children into behaving, the thing that made grown soldiers wake up screaming from nightmares. "How long until we reach Colony 7? Jake asked his pilot, Mark Taylor. "At maximum speed, about 4 hours, sir," Mark replied. He was an older man with gray hair who had been flying ships longer than Jake had been alive. "Set course immediately. Send a message to Earth Command and let them know where we are going." Jake's second officer, Amy Chen, looked worried. "Sir, should we wait for backup? The records show that Vexithara has destroyed over 300 ships in the last 50 years. Jake understood her concern. The Liberty's Edge carried 38 crew members, and they were like family to him. He did not want to lead them into certain death. But 8,000 innocent people needed help, and they were the only Earth ship close enough to make a difference. "We go now," Jake said firmly. "Plot the fastest course to Colony 7. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Jake went to his ready room and pulled up everything the Earth military knew about Vexithara. The files made for terrifying reading. The creature was 12 stories tall and looked like something from humanity's worst nightmares. Its body was covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. Massive claws extended from its arms, each one sharp enough to cut through solid steel. Plasma cannons were built into its shoulders, and smaller weapons covered its entire body. But the most frightening thing about Vexithara was that nobody knew exactly what it was. The beast had appeared 300 years ago during the final days of the Zephyrian Empire. The Zephyrians were an alien race that had ruled a large part of the galaxy before their civilization collapsed for unknown reasons. When the Zephyrian worlds went silent, exploration teams found dead cities and empty planets, but they also found Vexithara, wandering through space like a ghost. The creature attacked anything that came near it, destroying ships and settlements without warning or mercy. Military experts had studied the beast for decades. They knew it was incredibly strong and nearly impossible to kill. Nuclear weapons only made it angry. Energy shields could not stop its claws. Even the largest battleships were no match for its firepower. Jake read about the Battle of Titan Ridge, where Admiral Sarah Stone had led 50 ships against Vexithara. The beast had destroyed 47 of them in less than an hour. The survivors reported that Vexithara seemed to enjoy the fight, making sounds that almost resembled laughter as it tore their ships apart. Dr. Lisa Kane had spent years studying Vexithara from a safe distance. She was a scientist who specialized in alien biology, and she had some unusual theories about the creature. Most people thought Vexithara was simply a killing machine, but Dr. Kane believed there was more to the story. According to her research, the Zephyrians had been a telepathic species. They could share thoughts and emotions with each other and with specially created creatures. Dr. Kane thought Vexithara might have been one of these bonded creatures, left alone when its masters died. Jake found her theory interesting but not very helpful. Even if Vexithera was lonely instead of evil, it was still destroying everything in its path. The creature had to be stopped, and Jake could not see any way to do it without a lot of people dying. 3 hours into their journey, Jake received another message from Colony 7. This time it was not from Commander Davis. The voice belonged to Dr. Kane herself. "This is Dr. Lisa Kane calling from Colony 7. I know this message will probably reach Earthships too late to help us, but I wanted to share what I have learned. I have been tracking Vexithera's movements for the past 6 months, and I found something important." Jake listened carefully as the scientist continued. "The creature does not attack randomly. It follows specific patterns, and it always pauses before destroying populated areas. I believe it is scanning for something or someone. My research into Zephyrian technology suggests that Vexithera might be looking for a new telepathic partner. If I am right, there might be a way to communicate with it instead of fighting it." The message ended there, cut off by what sounded like explosions in the background. "Sir, we are approaching Colony 7, Mark reported from the pilot's seat. Jake returned to the bridge and looked at the main screen. Colony 7 was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. It reminded him of Earth, which made what was about to happen even more tragic. Then he saw Vexithera, and his blood turned cold. The creature was even more terrifying in person than in the military files. It moved across the planet's surface like a walking mountain, each step causing earthquakes that could be seen from space. Its black armor gleamed in the light of the system's twin suns, and Jake could see the glow of its weapon systems charging up. "Distance to the creature?" Jake asked. 50 kilometers and closing on the main settlement, Amy replied. "Sir, our weapons will not even scratch that thing." Jake knew she was right, but he had to try. "All hands to battle stations. Charge the main guns and prepare for attack." As the Liberty's Edge dropped into the planet's atmosphere, Jake watched Vexithera approach the settlement where 8,000 people waited in underground shelters. The creature moved with purpose, as if it knew exactly where it was going. Jake thought about Dr. Kane's theory. Maybe the beast was not just a mindless killer. Maybe it was searching for something it had lost long ago. But even if that was true, Jake could not let it destroy Colony 7 while looking for answers. "Take us in," he ordered. "We make our stand here." The Liberty's Edge flew toward the most dangerous creature in the galaxy, its small crew ready to sacrifice everything to protect innocent lives. Jake knew they would probably all die in the next few minutes, but sometimes doing the right thing was more important than surviving. Below them, Vexithera stopped walking and looked up at their ship. For a moment, Jake could have sworn the creature looked curious rather than angry. Then its weapons began to glow and the real battle was about to begin. The evacuation sirens had been wailing for 2 hours, but 6-year-old Danny Walsh did not seem bothered by the noise. He sat at a small table in the community center, carefully coloring a picture with his crayons. The other children had been taken to the underground shelters, but Danny had wandered away from his group while the adults were busy. Mrs. Betty Clark found him there when she came back to check that everyone had left the building. Betty was 70 years old and had been teaching children on Colony 7 for 30 years. She had never seen a child stay so calm during an emergency. "Danny, sweetie, we need to go to the safe place underground," Betty said gently. She knew Danny was different from other children. His father had explained that the boy's brain worked in a special way that made him see the world differently. Danny looked up at her with bright blue eyes and smiled. "I'm almost finished with my picture, Mrs. Clark. Look, I drew the big creature that everyone is talking about." Betty looked at the drawing and felt her heart skip a beat. Most children would have drawn Vexithera as a scary monster with sharp teeth and angry eyes, but Danny's picture showed a beautiful creature with intricate patterns on its armor. The beast looked sad rather than frightening, and Danny had colored it in shades of blue and silver that made it seem almost peaceful. "That's a very nice picture, Danny, but we really need to go now," Betty said, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. "Can I bring my picture?" Danny asked. "I want to show it to the creature when it gets here." Betty felt a chill run down her spine. "Oh no, honey. We don't want to meet the creature. It's very dangerous. We need to hide until it goes away." Danny tilted his head to one side. the way he always did when he was thinking hard about something. But why would it be dangerous? It looks lonely in my picture. Maybe it just wants a friend. Before Betty could answer, the ground shook so hard that books fell off the shelves. Through the window, she could see people running toward the shelter entrances. In the distance, a dark shape moved across the horizon like a walking mountain. "Danny, we have to go right now," Betty said, reaching for his hand. But Danny had already walked to the window and was looking out at Vexithara with pure curiosity. "Wow, it's even more beautiful than I thought it would be. Look at how the light shines on its armor, Mrs. Clark." Betty looked out the window and saw only death approaching. Vexithara was 3 miles away, but getting closer with each massive step. Each footprint left a crater in the ground, and the creature's weapons glowed with deadly energy. She grabbed Danny's hand and pulled him toward the door, but the boy was surprisingly strong for his size. "I want to see it up close," he said. "I think it wants to see my picture." "Danny, that creature has destroyed entire planets. It's not here to look at pictures." "How do you know?" Danny asked. "Has anyone ever shown it a picture before?" Betty did not know how to answer that question. She picked Danny up and carried him toward the nearest shelter entrance, but the boy kept looking back at the approaching creature. Meanwhile, on the Liberty's edge, Captain Jake Morrison was trying to figure out how to fight something that could not be killed. His ship's weapons were powerful enough to destroy most targets, but the military files on Vexithara made it clear that conventional attacks were useless. "Sir, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the creature," said Amy Chen, studying her instruments. "It's not just moving randomly. The beast seems to be scanning the area." Dr. Lisa Kane had managed to reach the command center in the main settlement before the creature arrived. She was now in radio contact with the Liberty's Edge, sharing her research in real time. "Captain Morrison, this is Dr. Kane. I'm monitoring Vexithara's approach, and I'm seeing behavior patterns that support my theory. The creature is definitely searching for something specific." "What kind of something?" Jake asked over the radio. "I believe it's looking for a telepathic connection. The Zephyrians bonded with their creatures through direct mental contact. When the Empire fell, their warbeasts were left without guidance. Vexithara might be trying to find a new partner." Jake watched the creature through his ship's cameras. "Doctor, even if you're right, how does that help us? Humans aren't telepathic." "Most humans aren't," Dr. Kane replied. "But some people have brain patterns that might be compatible with Zephyrian technology. The problem is that fear and aggression seem to trigger the creature's violent responses. It would need to encounter someone who doesn't see it as a threat." "That's impossible," Jake said. "Anyone with half a brain would be terrified of that thing." Down in the settlement, Betty Clark had finally reached one of the shelter entrances with Danny in her arms. The heavy metal doors were closing as the last few stragglers made it inside. But just as she was about to enter the shelter, Danny wiggled out of her grip and ran back toward the surface. "Danny, come back!" Betty shouted. But the boy was already climbing the stairs that led outside. The shelter doors sealed shut with a loud clang, leaving Betty trapped inside with the other civilians. She pounded on the metal doors and screamed for someone to let her out. But the safety protocols could not be overridden once the creature was within 5 miles of the settlement. Danny emerged from the shelter entrance into the bright sunlight of Colony 7's twin suns. The evacuation sirens had stopped and the settlement was eerily quiet. Toys and personal belongings were scattered across the streets where people had dropped them in their hurry to reach safety. The boy walked calmly through the empty streets, still carrying his crayon drawing. He was not afraid, because his brain simply did not process fear the way other people did. To Danny, Vexithara was not a monster, but a fascinating puzzle that he wanted to solve. The creature was now only half a mile away, and each step made the ground shake like an earthquake. Buildings swayed back and forth, and car alarms began blaring throughout the settlement. But Danny kept walking toward the edge of town, drawn by an instinct he did not fully understand. On the Liberty's Edge, Jake watched in horror as his sensors detected a small human figure moving away from the shelters. "There's someone still on the surface," he told his crew. "A child by the size of the heat signature." "Should we beam them up?" asked Mark Taylor. "We're too far away, and our transporters don't work that close to the creature's energy field," Jake replied. That kid is on their own. Dr. Kane's voice crackled over the radio. Captain, if there really is a child approaching Vexithara, this could be exactly what we need. Children's minds are more flexible than adults. They don't have the same fear responses that trigger the creature's aggression. You're talking about using a child as bait, Jake said angrily. I'm talking about the possibility that this child might be our only hope, Dr. Kane replied. If my theory is correct, Vexithara will recognize a compatible mind and attempt to establish contact instead of attacking. Jake did not like the idea of risking a child's life, but he also knew that 8,000 people would die if they could not find a way to stop the creature. He ordered his weapons officer to target Vexithara's head, hoping to distract it if the child was in danger. Danny reached the edge of the settlement just as Vexithara came over the last hill. The creature was even more magnificent up close than it had been in the distance. Its armor was covered with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change in the sunlight. Energy coursed through channels in its body like glowing veins, and its eyes were not cruel or angry but simply empty. The boy stood in a field of scattered toys and looked up at the towering figure. Vexithara was so tall that Danny had to bend, his neck all the way back to see its face. The creature's massive head turned downward, and its glowing eyes focused on the small human standing alone in the field. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Danny held up his crayon drawing so the creature could see it, and Vexithara's head tilted slightly to one side, as if it was trying to understand what the boy was showing it. Then, something unexpected happened. The creature's weapons powered down, and the angry red glow in its eyes faded to a soft blue light. Vexithara lowered its massive head until it was only a few feet above Danny, and the boy could see his own reflection in the creature's optical sensors. Hello? Danny said in his small, clear voice. I drew a picture of you. Do you want to see it? Captain Jake Morrison had seen many strange things during his 20 years in space, but nothing had prepared him for what he was watching now. Through his ship's cameras, he could see the most feared creature in the galaxy standing perfectly, still while a 6-year-old boy showed it a crayon drawing. Amy, are you getting readings on the creature's energy levels? Jake asked his second officer. Amy Chen stared at her instruments in amazement. Sir, Vexithara's weapon systems are completely powered down. Its stress indicators are dropping fast. Whatever that child is doing, it's working. On the planet's surface, Danny Walsh looked up at the massive creature without any fear in his heart. His brain worked differently than other people's brains, and where most humans would see a terrifying monster, Danny saw something beautiful and sad. I made this picture just for you, Danny said, holding up his drawing. I used my blue crayon because blue is my favorite color, and I thought you might like it too. Vexithara's huge head moved closer to the boy. The creature's optical sensors focused on the drawing, and for the first time in 300 years it saw itself through the eyes of someone who was not afraid. Danny had drawn the beast with care and attention to detail, capturing the elegant patterns on its armor and the graceful way it moved. Dr. Lisa Kane watched the scene from the command center and felt her heart racing with excitement. She had spent years studying Vexithara from a distance, but now she was seeing proof that her theories were correct. Captain Morrison, can you hear me? She called over the radio. I'm here, Doctor. What's happening down there? I believe the child has made contact with Vexithara. The creature's biosignatures show that it's experiencing something it hasn't felt in centuries. If I'm right about Zephyrian bonding technology, that boy might be naturally compatible with the creature's neural systems. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying the kid is reading the monster's mind? Not exactly, Dr. Kane replied. The Zephyrians used a form of telepathic bonding that allowed them to share emotions and basic thoughts with their warbeasts. The child's unusual brain patterns might make him capable of the same kind of connection. Down in the field, Danny continued talking to Vexithara in his small, clear voice. He told the creature about his drawing and about how he had chosen each color carefully. He talked about his father, who worked in the mines and came home covered in dust every day. He mentioned his mother, who had died in a transport accident 2 years ago and who he still missed very much. As Danny spoke, something incredible began to happen. Vexithara's armor started to glow with soft patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with the boy's voice. The creature's massive body relaxed, and it settled down onto the ground so that its head was closer to Danny's level. The boy reached out his small hand and placed it against a section of the creature's armor that was glowing with gentle blue light. The moment his skin made contact with the beast's biometal surface, both of them froze as if struck by lightning. Danny suddenly felt emotions that were not his own flooding through his mind. He experienced loneliness so deep, it made him want to cry. Confusion that had lasted for centuries and a desperate need to find purpose in a universe that no longer made sense. But underneath all that pain, he felt something else. A spark of hope that had been buried for so long the creature had forgotten it existed. At the same time, Vexithara felt human emotions for the first time in its long existence. Through Danny's innocent mind, it experienced wonder at the beauty of the twin suns, sadness for a mother who would never come home, and love for a father who worked hard to take care of his special son. Most importantly, the creature felt acceptance from someone who saw past its weapons and armor to the living being beneath. On the Liberty's edge, Jake watched his instruments go crazy as unknown energy patterns flowed between the boy and the beast. "Doctor, what's happening to them?" Dr. Kane's voice was filled with awe. "They're bonding, Captain. The child is establishing a telepathic link with Vexithara. This is the first successful human-Zephyrian neural connection in recorded history." The connection lasted only a few seconds, but it changed both Danny and Vexithara forever. When the boy pulled his hand away from the creature's armor, he staggered backward with tears streaming down his face. "You're not scary at all," Danny whispered. "You're just lost and lonely. You've been looking for your family for a really long time, haven't you?" Vexithara made a sound that was unlike anything it had ever produced before. Instead of the roars and mechanical noises that had terrorized worlds, the creature let out something that almost sounded like a sigh of relief. Danny wiped his eyes and looked up at the massive being. "My mom used to tell me that when you're lost you should ask for help, but you don't know how to ask, do you? You only know how to fight because that's what you were taught to do." The creature's optical sensors dimmed as if it was thinking about the boy's words. Through their brief connection, Danny had learned something important about Vexithara's past. The beast had been created by the Zephyrians not as a weapon of destruction, but as a protector. Its job had been to defend colonies and keep families safe. But when the Zephyrian Empire collapsed and all the telepathic masters died, Vexithara had been left alone with only its basic programming. Without guidance from a bonded partner, the creature had continued trying to protect things, but its definition of protection had become twisted over the centuries. It destroyed potential threats instead of nurturing what it was meant to guard. "You want to help people, don't you?" Danny said. "But you forgot how because you've been alone for so long." Jake Morrison had heard enough. "All weapons officers target the creature's head. If it makes any move toward that child, fire everything we have." But Dr. Kane's voice stopped him. "Captain, wait. Look at what's happening." Jake looked at his screens and saw something impossible. Vexithara's weapon systems were not just powered down, they were actually retracting into its body. Massive plasma cannons folded away like flower petals closing at night. The sharp claws on its hands became smoother and more precise, designed for building rather than destroying. The creature was transforming itself, guided by the emotional connection it had shared with Danny. Ancient programming that had been dormant for centuries began to activate as Vexithara remembered its original purpose. Danny watched in wonder as the terrifying Warbeast became something else entirely. The creature's armor shifted color from threatening black to a warm silver blue. Gentle lights began to pulse along patterns that had been hidden beneath weapon mountings. Most amazingly, Vexithara's face changed as well. The cold, empty optical sensors became warmer and more expressive. "That's better," Danny said with a smile. "Now you look like the creature in my drawing." But the neural connection had been overwhelming for the young boy. Danny's brain was naturally compatible with Zephyrian technology, but he was still just a child trying to process emotions and memories that belonged to a being thousands of years old. Danny collapsed to his knees, his small body shaking from exhaustion. Vexithera immediately leaned down and gently scooped the boy up in its massive hands, cradling him with surprising tenderness. Mrs. Betty Clark had finally managed to convince the shelter operators to override the safety locks. She emerged from underground just in time to see the transformed creature holding Danny like a parent holding a sleeping baby. "Danny!" she cried out, running toward them. Vexithara turned its great head toward the approaching woman. For a moment, Betty thought she was about to die, but instead of attacking, the creature gently lowered Danny to the ground and stepped back as if to show that it meant no harm. Danny opened his eyes and looked up at Mrs. Clark. "It's okay," he said weakly. "Vex wants to be friends now. It just needed someone to understand." The boy struggled to his feet and walked back to the creature. He placed his hand on its armor again, and this time, the connection was gentler and more controlled. "You don't have to hurt anymore," Danny whispered to Vexithera. "You can help instead of destroying. That's what you were really made for, wasn't it?" The creature's response came not in words, but in a wave of gratitude and relief that Danny felt through their bond. For the first time in 3 centuries, Vexithara had found its purpose again. Dr. Lisa Kane ran across the settlement as fast as her legs could carry her. She had spent years dreaming of this moment, but she never imagined it would happen because a 6-year-old boy had decided to make friends with the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. When she reached the field where Danny and Vexithera were standing together, she stopped and stared in amazement. The creature that had terrorized dozens of worlds now looked completely different. Its black armor had changed to a warm silver color and gentle lights pulsed across its surface like a slow heartbeat. "Danny, are you okay?" Dr. Kane asked, approaching carefully. The boy looked up at her with tired but happy eyes. "I'm fine, Dr. Kane. Vex told me its real name and showed me pictures of its old home. It used to live on a planet with big purple trees and 3 moons." Dr. Kane felt her heart skip a beat. "Danny, did you say it told you its real name?" "Vexithera isn't its real name," Danny explained. "That's just what scared people called it. Its real name is—" The boy paused and made a sound that was part whistle and part musical note. "I can't say it right with my mouth, but I can feel it in my head." The creature heard Danny trying to pronounce its true name and made a gentle rumbling sound that almost sounded like laughter. It lowered its massive head and touched the boy's forehead with one of its smaller sensor arrays. Through their connection, Dr. Kane could see Danny's eyes widen with wonder. "Oh, wow," the boy whispered. "You're showing me how your people used to talk to each other. It's like singing inside your mind." Captain Jake Morrison's voice crackled over Dr. Kane's radio. "Doctor, what's the situation down there? My sensors are picking up massive energy changes in the creature." "The child has established a full telepathic bond with the creature," Dr. Kane replied. "Captain, I think we're witnessing something that will change our understanding of the universe." On the Liberty's edge, Jake watched through his cameras as the boy and the creature communicated in ways that human science could barely understand. "Doctor, is the kid in any danger?" Before Dr. Kane could answer, Danny spoke up. "Captain Morrison, can you hear me? Vex wants to talk to you." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "The creature wants to talk to me?" "It's not a creature," Danny said patiently. "It's a person just like you and me. It thinks different thoughts and has different feelings. But it's still a person, and it wants to say sorry for all the bad things it did." Through Danny's connection, Vexithara began to share its story. The boy translated the alien thoughts into words that humans could understand. "A long time ago, Vex lived on a beautiful world with its family," Danny said. "But then something terrible happened. A sickness spread through space that made all the telepathic people die. Vex's friends and family got sick and couldn't talk to it anymore." The creature's lights dimmed with sadness as it remembered those dark days. Danny felt its pain through their bond and reached up to pat its armor gently. When Vex couldn't hear its family's thoughts anymore, it got very confused. Danny continued. "It was supposed to protect people, but it didn't know how to do that without someone to guide it. So it started attacking anything that might be dangerous, even when those things weren't really bad." Dr. Kane recorded every word as Danny translated. The creature's memories. This was the first time anyone had learned the truth about the fall of the Zephyrian Empire. The sickness wasn't a disease, Danny said, his voice getting quieter. It was something that attacked the part of their brains that let them share thoughts. Without that ability, the Zephyrian people couldn't work together anymore. Their whole civilization fell apart in just a few years. Jake Morrison felt a wave of sympathy for the creature that had seemed like a monster just hours ago. So it's been alone all this time? 300 years, Danny confirmed. But Vex never stopped hoping that someday it would find a new friend. Who could understand it? The boy placed both hands on the creature's armor and closed his eyes. Through their connection, he could feel something important happening inside Vexthara's ancient mind. Programming that had been damaged and twisted by centuries of loneliness was starting to repair itself. Vex wants to show everyone that it's not scary anymore, Danny said. It wants to help fix the things it broke. As if responding to the boy's words, Vexithara stood up and walked toward the settlement. But instead of the earth-shaking steps that had terrified everyone before, the creature now moved with careful grace. Its massive feet found solid ground between buildings, and it used its sensors to make sure no one was in danger. The creature stopped next to a building that had been damaged by the vibrations from its earlier approach. Using tools that emerged from its arms, Vexithara began to repair the structure with incredible precision. Its massive claws had been replaced by delicate manipulators that could handle materials as fragile as glass. People began to emerge from the underground shelters. Drawn by curiosity and the absence of danger, they watched in amazement as the creature that had come to destroy their world instead began to make it better. Mrs. Betty Clark was the first to approach. She had been taking care of Danny since his mother died, and she was not about to let anything happen to him now. "Danny, sweetheart, maybe you should come with me," she said nervously. "That creature is very big, and you're very small." "It's okay, Mrs. Clark," Danny replied. "Vex won't hurt anyone, it promised me." The creature heard its name and turned its great head toward the elderly teacher. Instead of the terrifying optical sensors she expected, Mrs. Clark saw what looked almost like kindness in those glowing eyes. Danny walked over to her and took her hand. "Vex wants to meet you properly. It's sorry it scared you before." Against her better judgment, Mrs. Clark allowed Danny to lead her closer to the creature. Vexithara lowered its head and made a soft musical sound that somehow conveyed both apology and greeting. "It's saying hello," Danny translated, "and it wants to know if there are other children in the settlement who might want to be friends." Over the next few hours, more people came out of the shelters. At first they were afraid, but Danny's calm presence and the creature's gentle behavior gradually won them over. Children were especially quick to accept their new friend, and soon a small group of brave youngsters were showing Vexthara their own drawings and toys. Dr. Kane documented everything as the creature continued to repair damaged buildings and improve the settlement's infrastructure. Its advanced technology could accomplish in minutes what would take human workers days to complete. But the most amazing thing was watching Danny and Vexithara together. The boy seemed to understand the creature's needs instinctively, and he helped it process emotions and experiences that had been locked away for centuries. "You don't have to be alone anymore," Danny told the creature as the twin suns began to set. "You have friends now, and friends take care of each other." Vexithara's response came not in words but in a wave of gratitude so powerful that everyone nearby could feel it. The creature had finally found what it had been searching for all these years. Captain Jake Morrison landed his shuttle near the settlement and walked over to where Danny was sitting with his new friend. "Son, what you did today was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Danny looked up at the captain with his innocent blue eyes. "I wasn't being brave," he said. "I was just being nice. Sometimes being nice is the most important thing you can do." Jake looked at the massive creature that was gently tending to a garden of flowers that had been damaged during the evacuation. "I think you're right, Danny. I think being nice might be the most powerful force in the universe." As night fell over, Colony 7, Vexithara took up a position at the edge of the settlement. But instead of the threatening stance of a conqueror, the creature stood like a guardian watching over the people it had sworn to protect. For the first time in 300 years, Vexthara was home. 3 weeks had passed since the day that changed everything on Colony 7. Danny Walsh sat in his favorite spot on top of the hill overlooking the settlement, watching Vexathara work in the fields below. The creature was helping the farmers plant new crops using its advanced sensors to make sure each seed was placed in the perfect spot. The settlement looked completely different now. Where there had once been simple buildings, Vexathara had helped build beautiful structures that seemed to grow out of the ground like crystal trees. The creature's technology had improved everything from the water systems to the power generators, making life easier for everyone. But the most amazing change was in the people themselves. Children who had once been afraid of loud noises now laughed and played around their giant friend. Adults who had lived in fear of the next disaster now felt safe knowing that Vexathara was watching over them. Danny's father, Pete Walsh, climbed up the hill and sat down next to his son. Pete was a simple man who worked hard in the mines, but even he could see that something wonderful had happened to their world. "How are you feeling today, Danny?" Pete asked, putting his arm around the boy's shoulders. "I'm good, Dad." Vex taught me a new song this morning. Want to hear it? Danny closed his eyes and made a series of musical sounds that seemed to come from deep in his throat. The melody was unlike anything human musicians had ever created, but it was beautiful in a way that made Pete's heart feel warm. "That's lovely, son. What does it mean?" "It's a song about being grateful," Danny explained. Vex's people used to sing it when they were thankful for their friends and family. Down in the settlement, Dr. Lisa Kane was finishing her daily report to Earth Command. She had decided to stay on Colony 7 permanently to study the bond between Danny and Vexathara. Her research was already changing how humans understood alien intelligence. "Personal log, day 21, she dictated to her computer. "The subject continues to demonstrate unprecedented telepathic compatibility with Zephyrian neural structures. More importantly, the child has taught the creature emotional concepts that appear to be healing centuries of psychological damage." Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system. "Dr. Kane, this is the Liberty's Edge. We have some news from Earth that you need to hear." Lisa activated the main screen and saw Jake's face appear. Behind him, she could see the stars of hyperspace streaming past his ship's windows. "What's the news, Captain?" "Earth Command has been monitoring our reports about Danny and Vexathara. They've located 3 more Zephyrian war creatures in different parts of the galaxy. They want to know if we think other humans might be able to form similar bonds." Lisa felt her heart race with excitement. "Captain, if there are more creatures like Vexathara out there, they must be suffering the same loneliness and confusion. We have to try to help them." "That's what I told Earth Command," Jake replied. "But they want Danny to be involved in the process. They think his experience might be the key to making contact with the other creatures." Lisa looked out her window at Danny and his father sitting on the hill. The boy had already done so much for one small person. It hardly seemed fair to ask him to take on the responsibility of helping other lost creatures. But when she explained the situation to Danny and Pete, the boy's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Of course I want to help," Danny said. "If there are other creatures like Vex who are sad and lonely, we have to make them feel better." Pete was more cautious. "Son, it might be dangerous. We know Vexathara won't hurt you, but we don't know anything about these other creatures." Danny thought about this for a moment, then smiled. "Dad, Vex was scary too before I met it. But it wasn't really mean, it was just confused. I bet the other creatures are the same way." That evening, the whole settlement gathered in the main square to discuss the plan. Vexathara lowered its great head so it could participate in the conversation. Danny translated the creature's thoughts for everyone to hear. "Vex says there are indeed other guardians lost in space," Danny announced. "It can feel them sometimes very far away. They're calling out for help, but no one knows how to answer them." Mrs. Betty Clark raised her hand. "Danny, dear, are you sure you want to do this? You're still just a little boy." "I'm not little anymore, Mrs. Clark," Danny replied seriously. "I'm a bridge between humans and Vex's people. That makes me special in a good way." Commander Roy Davis, who had led the settlement's defense during the crisis, stood up to speak. "If we're going to do this, we need to make sure Danny is as safe as possible. I suggest we send a full fleet to support him." But Danny shook his head. Too many ships might scare the other creatures. They're already afraid because they've been alone for so long. I think just me and Vex should go. Captain Morrison joined the conversation by radio from his ship. Danny, I'm not comfortable with you traveling across the galaxy with just one creature to protect you, no matter how powerful it is. Then come with us, Danny suggested. You and Dr. Kane and some of the other people who understand what's happening. We can all help together. And so the plan was made. The Liberty's Edge would carry Danny, Dr. Kane, and a small team of specialists to the locations where the other Zephyrian creatures had been spotted. Vexithara would travel alongside the ship, protected by a special energy field that would allow it to survive in space. The night before they were scheduled to leave, Danny sat with Vexithara under the light of Colony 7's 3 moons. The creature had built a special garden just for quiet moments like this, filled with flowers that glowed softly in the darkness. Are you nervous about meeting your friends again? Danny asked through their mental connection. Vexithara's response was a mixture of excitement and sadness. The creature was eager to help others of its kind, but it was also afraid of what 3 centuries of loneliness might have done to them. It's okay to be scared, Danny said out loud. I get scared sometimes, too. But we're going to help them just like I helped you, and you're not alone anymore, so you don't have to be afraid. The next morning, the entire settlement came to see them off. Pete hugged his son tightly, making Danny promise to be careful and to come home safely. I'll be back soon, Dad, Danny said. And when I come home, maybe I'll bring some new friends with me. As the Liberty's Edge lifted off from Colony 7, Danny looked out the window at Vexithara flying alongside the ship. The creature's armor gleamed in the sunlight, and its bioluminescent patterns pulsed with contentment. 6 months later, Danny and his team had successfully made contact with all 3 of the lost Zephyrian creatures. Each one had been suffering from the same loneliness and confusion that had driven Vexithara to violence. But with Danny's help, they had all remembered their true purpose as protectors and guardians. The creatures were now living peacefully on different worlds, helping human colonies and learning to trust again. Danny had even found 2 other children with brain patterns similar to his own, and they were forming their own bonds with the ancient guardians. Dr. Kane's reports to Earth Command described the beginning of a new era in human-alien relations. The partnership between humans and the Zephyrian guardians was creating stronger, safer colonies throughout the galaxy. But for Danny, the most important thing was much simpler. He had made friends with beings that everyone else thought were monsters, and he had helped them remember how to be happy. On Colony 7, Vexithara continued to watch over the settlement like a gentle giant. Children played games around its massive feet, and adults brought it their problems knowing that their guardian would always find a way to help. The creature that had once been the most feared thing in the galaxy was now beloved by thousands of people, across dozens of worlds. And it all started because one little boy had decided to share his crayon drawing with a lonely monster. Danny Walsh had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe was simply kindness, and that understanding could triumph over fear if someone was brave enough to try. The mighty Warbeast had indeed feared nothing, until a child whispered the most important command of all. You don't have to be alone anymore.